balanced budget, just as we promised.
The Conservatives will goose middle-class Canadians and feather the nests of the rich with their income-splitting plan.
After weeks of delay, we have the final word. The federal budget is coming in a few weeks, and even before it's unveiled, the politicians are eager to win you over to their interpretation of it. The politicians had their say. Now we'll have ours here on the Sunday Scrum. Susan Riley is a freelance columnist, and Rosemary Barton is with CBC News. Both are in Ottawa today, smiling, happy on an Easter Sunday. Hello to you both. So, the budget. Joe Oliver finally announcing that it's going to be April 21st. How challenging, Rosie, do you think it'll be for the government to balance this budget, given all those goodies that are coming in the mail?
I think they're going to do it. Obviously, they've been waiting because this is their big electoral platform, right? The anti-terror bill is done. They've now extended the Iraq mission. So this is the other thing, and presumably this is the thing that Canadians care more about, right? Is the economy. How are you going to make jobs? What are you going to put back in our wallets? That kind of stuff. I think that they're going to balance the budget. It's just, I guess the question is, what else will we see in the budget? We know that the income splitting is coming. We know that the increased child benefits are coming, and we know that they plan to balance the budget. So I think inevitably they're going to have to dip into the $3 billion contingency fund that they put aside. But then you have to wonder, well, what else can they possibly do, right? If they've already promised away much of the money, what else do they have to play with? And the answer is probably not very much. So if they want to campaign on the tax cut things and the family things, I think the only other thing that they might be able to do is promise things going forward. So 2 years from now, we will finally do this, or 3 years from now, we will do this, re-elect us so that we can keep this up. But I think it's going to be difficult. I think that they have very little room left.
And what do you make, Susan? We heard from Scott Bryson there. We've heard other opposition MPs say something similar along the lines of, well, income splitting, this is really helping out the rich. It's not helping out middle-class Canadians. Do you think that's the kind of message that is going to resonate with Canadians?
It's hard to say. It should. I think it should resonate with Canadians, because I think Bryson's absolutely right, at least when it comes to income splitting between spouses. I mean, it's been proven, and it benefits 15% of the population, the most wealthy. It's uncontroversial. The Conservatives turn that argument around and they say, oh, well, the Liberals are against income splitting for seniors, which they are not. The Liberals are going to get rid of the universal child care benefit, which they are not. I mean, they basically just say the Liberals are just wanton, reckless, spenders. They can't wait to put us back into a deficit, which totally ignores, I'm not a Liberal tout, by the way, but this totally ignores the reality and the Liberal record. So the real question, I think, is this going to work or not? And I really can't answer that. It shouldn't work, but it might.
The other thing to remember, too, Andrew, is that those checks that go from $100 to $160 if you have a child, those start rolling out in July. You also get the check retroactively from January. So if you have one kid, you're going to get a big check, like $500, $600 suddenly in July.
She's taking us all out to lunch, Andrew.
Yeah, and that's going to, for some people, that makes a real difference, right? $160 extra bucks a month is going to make a big difference. To have a retroactively check just before families go on summer holidays, don't play down how much impact that could have for people as they go to the polls. You
know what's different about our discussion is, for the first time, we're spending a lot of time talking about the economy and talking about the budget. We've been spending the last few months talking about the mission against ISIS, talking about Bill C-51. So how does that change the dynamic now, Susan, in your opinion, that the focus is going to be, at least for a few weeks, on the economy?
Well, first of all, just to follow up on what Rosie just said, this $600 bribe is going to be welcomed just before the Christmas holidays, but it well might be forgotten. Summer holidays. But it well might be forgotten by October when we go to the polls, and a whole bunch of other things are going to intervene. So I'm not sure about how long-term the political benefit of that is going to be. Second of all, it seems to me that the Conservatives have a real problem. They're on a tightrope. On the one hand, they can say to Canadians, the economy's going great, and they say this all the time. Unemployment is down. We're creating all these quality jobs.
We hear from the Bank of Canada Governor Stephen Poloz saying it's atrocious. GDP numbers are atrocious. That doesn't sound great.
So on the one hand, they're saying, look at how great we're doing. You've got to give us your vote so that we can keep doing. On the other hand, they have to say, things are still a little unstable. Things are uneasy. We're nervous. You need a steady hand at the tiller. So they're selling two messages, basically. One, relax, be happy. The other, Don't let anybody else take over or we're in trouble. And it's a confusing message. I don't know what to believe.
What did you make, Rosie, of Paul Martin's characterization of the government's economic plan as I think he called it an absolute disgrace, nonsensical? Why? Have you heard anything about why Paul Martin made those comments? Is it any indication that why isn't Justin Trudeau making those comments? Why are you bringing out the old horse?
Well, I mean, this is a person who balanced budget after budget. You know, he has a reputation as a strong finance minister, and he was obviously saying it for liberal reasons, right? Not just because this is what Paul Martin thinks. I think that he had at least one point that Canadians should, sort of focus in on, and that is what is the government announcing over the longer term in the next budget to create growth and jobs? It's something that the Liberals and the NDP are both talking about in different ways, although Paul Martin obviously just talked about the Liberal plans with our infrastructure, education, that kind of stuff. But what will the government do, not only to make sure there's money back in our pockets and make sure we're back out of deficit heading towards a balanced budget, but what are they doing long term to make sure that the economy is sustainable and that jobs are being created? And I'm not sure what the answer will be. And I'm not sure what the plan is, but let's be clear: as oil prices continue to be low, the damage from that, the layoffs from that, will be much delayed. So things are not going to look that bad in April, but a few months from now, they're going to look much worse in Alberta and other places. So I think that's a point that Paul Martin made, and it's something that people should keep in mind. And that to me is sort of a nonpartisan point. You need some sort of longer-term plan, and what is it?
Susan, did you read anything into what Paul Martin had to say?
Yes, I think he was stepping into a huge vacuum. There's no Liberal who's really powerfully and persuasively making the case that the Liberals aren't going to wreck the economy. And again, I am honestly not a Liberal, because the Liberals got us out of deficit but damaged the healthcare system in so doing, and secondary education. I mean, it was a painful process that Mr. Martin and Jean Chrétien put into place. You can argue against it, but looking at the economy through a conservative frame, which is what the Conservatives do, obviously, you could hardly get a better Conservative, Prime Minister than Paul Martin, in a sense. So he's defending his own record. He's moving into a gap. In a sense, he's making Justin Trudeau look even more irrelevant than he does on these issues right now. I know Ralph Goodale has tried to make this case.
Do you think did Trudeau say, please don't make this speech, or did Martin just go and make the speech on his own? So this is not sanctioned by the leader, right?
No, I think Paul Martin says what he wants to say, unless he's asked to, put out an editorial or something. I think these are his convictions. I think that Susan is right, though. I don't know that, and this is in part because of the Liberal strategy of not rolling out all the parts of their platform, right? But I don't know that we have had a Liberal articulate in the same way that Paul Martin did what the problems with the economy is. But sometimes it's better, from a political perspective, to let the guy on the outside do that, right? Rather than the actual leader. Sometimes there are political calculations behind that, and it's actually better for someone to be kicking the government rather than the current leader. That would be my only thought.
Okay, so now turning to news this weekend, that 2 Conservative cabinet ministers won't be running for re-election. Happened Friday afternoon. Heritage Minister Shelley Glover of Manitoba is citing family reasons and says she'll go back to policing. Christian Paradis from Quebec is International Development Minister. He also said it's a personal decision, and this is in addition to John Barrett's departure. So, Rosie, is this just, they've been in power for 9 years. Are these just ministers saying, I just want to go do something else, I've been there a while, or should we read more into it?
I think these are actually personal issues. I think that's true. But I also think that these are people who have experience around the cabinet table who are leaving, and this is beginning to look like a bit of a problem. When John Baird left, the Prime Minister and Chief of Staff apparently said to everybody, okay, if you're going to leave, you got to do it now because we're running out of time. Well, here's 2 more that are gone, and apparently this isn't over yet. There are others who will also say that they're not going to run again. But the window is shortening here, right? They're running out of time to say this, and the Prime Minister needs to know what sort of deck he will have if he was going to form government again, and who he can sort of rely on to help him win the next election. So I mean, I do believe them that these are personal reasons, but I think that it is not the best news for the Prime Minister as he's looking for strength in his front benches.
And so 2 dozen MPs overall, I think it is, right, that are choosing not to run.
That's
Susan?
Right.
Well, that said, I don't think Christian Paradis is a great loss. He comes from Thetford Mines. He was the last sort of living defender of the asbestos industry there, a small-town lawyer. Basically, there are so few Quebecers in Mr. Harper's caucus that if you, are breathing and can sit upright, you're sort of guaranteed a cabinet seat. So I don't think he was a huge contributor to the success of the party. Shelley Glover's another issue. I really think she is a loss because she's so different. Her whole background is so different. She's a Métis, she's bilingual, she's from St. Boniface in Winnipeg. She has spoken openly about a very troubled early life, alcoholism and whatnot. Pardon me?
A cop.
Yes, that's right. She had a child when she was 18. She went to police school, became a police officer, worked undercover, drugs, etc. I mean, she brought such a different background to the Commons. It was really valuable, and I thought she performed pretty well as a minister too. So she will be. I think the big question, we were just discussing it before we started, is Joe Oliver, the finance minister. He turned 75 in May, and I mean, you can still keep going. I'm not being ageist at all, but why would you want to, really? And he, I don't know, and he also comes from a Toronto riding that has been liberal, and that will be very much in contention. I don't think the Conservatives are very popular anywhere in downtown Toronto.
Well, that's the riding where Eve Adams is trying to win the Liberal nomination, don't forget, and he has said that he's in it to win it, and he also, what everybody says about Joe Oliver is that he's a workaholic. He just, he's a real workhorse.
He won't
so
leave,
he's not like us. I would be long gone.
We're going to take a bet on it. But anyway.
Well, nice to see you both sitting upright and breathing on this Sunday morning.